Hi, everyone. Welcome to our official first episode of the Where the Money At podcast.
Where the money at?
Where the Money
Where
At
the damn money
podcast.
at?
On this podcast, we discuss the journey to wealth creation. Again, welcome. Myself, Ray Akitemi, based in Vancouver. And I'll let the other two gentlemen introduce themselves and we'll get into the cast for today.
All right, so it's your boy Dre Inc. here, the stock market investor, tech investor. Um, and we're looking to crack down on a few things. It's been a long week, but happy to be here and let's get this going.
Yes, sir.
Uh, there you go. There you go. I like how his name is a corporation. This LeVar Ball over here. Kwaku is your man Kwaku in the game, not an expert like these two in the subject matter. However, the socioeconomic side, as well as how it impacts legislation, etc., and the common man, I think I can give that perspective. Yeah, let's get into it.
That was good. It was good. How's the weather over there in Toronto?
Man, it's sunny but rainy.
Ah,
It's like London. It feels like London right now. Yeah, we have sun and it's kind of warm, but then it's raining every 2 seconds. It's kind of annoying. But
Yeah,
I'll
that's
take
yeah,
it
true.
over winter.
yeah.
Yeah, no,
That's
it's been good over here, can't lie, for the last couple of days, but we get
Mm.
the on and off rain where it's just kind of weird. But it's like, yo, leave the rain for April. Like right now we need spring to do its thing. We need spring to spring
yeah.
and
Yeah.
whatnot. But how's everyone's week going thus far? How's life impacting everyone? Work, family, I don't know, ventures. What else is going on here?
Mine's been busy, man, because obviously we're shooting this podcast a day earlier than planned.
Mm.
'Cause I'm actually going out
A
of town,
week?
so oh, was that?
Oh no,
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 it's
no,
a day.
sorry. Yeah,
It's a
you're right,
day.
you're right,
It's a
you're
Hey,
day.
right.
yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. And so I'm going out of town tomorrow. So then, of course, it's the same week. There's like conferences. I wasn't attending conferences, so just like back to back, just go, 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 go. It's one of those weeks where I just feel like you just run through everything, and then you know that meme where you like flip the paper, where you're just like, "Yep, I'm out."
Yeah.
I feel that.
So that's gonna be me tomorrow. 'Cause I'm actually, funny enough, you said London. I'm actually going to London tomorrow. Um, so at noon tomorrow, I'll shut my laptop, and it's like.
Like
uh,
London, Ontario, or London,
London,
And
UK. London, UK.
UK. Oh,
London,
nice.
UK. Yeah. It's going for a couple, like just under a week. So yeah, it's good though.
Gotcha.
Like I think by tomorrow I'll be calm. How about you both?
mm.
Cool, cool.
Go ahead, Andre.
All right. Um, just honestly recovering from the cold. Last time we recorded, I was sick and I started feeling better, and then I just went back into a little phase for a second there. So I'm bouncing back out of it for the end of this week, looking to take on the weekend strong. Long weekend, thank God. And but other than that, is this actually setting up a workshop with my mentee group on making a money. I call it a money game plan, and basically it's a budget. And I have a bunch of mentees who I'm trying to help grow their investment portfolios because one thing I've realized, I'm like, you know what? It's one thing if I could grow my own investment portfolios, another thing if I could help others do the same. So I'm trying to get them to that point, but it's more about investing when it's more about just more than just investing when it comes to me. We want people to understand, okay, when you're, when you're taking your finances serious, especially in the world of financial literacy, like budgeting is the number one priority because you start to realize that you're spending more than you should. A lot of people think they don't have the money to invest. And when you start breaking down the numbers and you start looking at your credit card statements and you start realizing like, all right, I'm actually kind of messing around a little bit too much here. So let's refine it. I'm doing a partnership with my boy Mikhail, and he's a Guyanese guy, and he grew up in Island of Grenada also. But his whole thing is about budgeting. So we're trying to get people on the right path and get a nice workshop this weekend. And I'm just preparing for that. So I was just getting some information together. I put together a stock portfolio for all my mentees. They gave me all the stocks that they're invested in. I put it on the Excel spreadsheet and showing them like, hey, this is the performance of everyone's individual stocks or ETFs, whatever it may be. And I'm happy. I'm happy and I'm excited and I'm looking forward to, helping more people get on that path. It's just like I think it's time we start taking financial literacy a lot more serious on how to invest and how to manage your money, especially within the Black community.
Facts.
Yeah, no, it's a huge deficiency we're not taught, and we don't understand, right? Because the market is the way the market is. It takes a base understanding and education. You just don't jump into it.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we're used to a lot of our cultural and customary ways of doing it. So we don't always open these doors. But if you sit down, there's a lot of ways you can make your money work for you. And yes, if you don't budget, you do not realize how much you throw around uselessly on frivolous things because you give into indulgences really that quickly, or you make that mistake of it's only $10, it's only $20, it's only this. And then that small amount, when you check by the end of the week, remember you do it's only $20 5 times, that's $100.
Yep,
So if
100%.
that's customary for every single week per month, that's $400 that's just tossed. And I'm pretty sure, Andre, you can say that 400, you can turn that around and make that somewhat worthwhile if you're doing some investing or something.
100%.
Towards your craft. Yeah.
No, that makes
Yeah.
sense. So,
Yeah.
but all in all, good week for you then?
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. That's good. So yeah, let's get into the pod. Now that we've picked a name, where the money at? I'm sure the reaction from people is like, well, what does that mean? Like, is it just about money? Like, well, what's is there anything else to offer? So, thought we'd spend the first part of this episode to just reflect and each of us just share what the name where the money at, how does that resonate with each of us, and why did we agree to go with that name for this podcast. So I thought that would be the first section. So I don't know who wants to take this first. Dre.
So where the money at is a play on a few things. So one, where the money at for me is in the stock market. I truly believe in that. Also for me, but I know with Ray, the real estate market, and we want to be able to open up the different avenues that people could figure out, okay, how can I get, myself involved in any of these asset classes? And then a play on Kweku's side is that because he works for, the government, is what y'all be doing with our money?
Where the money at?
Where the money at? So it's just a mixture, and we want not just the different asset classes that I named, but just also entrepreneurship, so creating a business, and maybe we could get into different things. And as the time goes on, we'll get more guests on the podcast. Something I really want us to focus on in the near future is getting a few guests on here, starting to interview a few people just so that you won't only hear just the three of our voices, but you're going to hear a wide selection of other folks from other industries and start to unleash some of the gems out here within the Canadian economy. How could you set up yourself, how to prepare yourself, and things that you could do to better your life and your family's life.
There you go.
Yeah. That's well said.
No, that's actually very well said.
I'm sitting here like he's like, I rest my case
on the episode now.
Right? The difference between Dre and I would say, is when I look at where the money at is, I would be the person who's on the first steps, because I've always felt the key to getting into something is either you have a pure passion of just making money, or you have a passion for something in particular, and that drives you into success of that particular thing, right? That's the two ways I've only seen people make money and succeed. So, I would argue I'm the one I have to be passionate about the thing to be able to drive it into a successful viewpoint or care about it, right? So this is the journey of how do I get to that point of generating and making more wealth and finding my thing. So this is a learning opportunity for me in one aspect, and also it bridges the worlds between how I analyze information because of my career, I don't analyze it from a high level economic point of view. I analyze it how it breaks down when it gets to the everyday person.
Yeah.
So this gives the idea of saying, okay, so this is what the Federal Reserve, this is what the banks, this is what the big money's thinking. And then having that understanding, I can bridge the gap for you people that do not know or do not read the business section, what that kind of looks like for you. So I am your common man amongst the corporates. Make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got you.
That's kind of how I see it. Because I think, and you guys have said it several times, there's a lot of potential. It's just there's a lack of understanding in our community. So if we can break it down in the simplest terms, then we can actually just see people generating legitimate wealth.
Yep.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, I don't have much to add to what you both have said, but I think for me, see money as sort of like an energy. That's energy transfer between, so like value exchange. So, when you add value to someone's life, add value to a society, you create a company that does whatever, then, sort of like the exchange of that is money, right? So for me, it's not just about, accumulation of money, but it's kind of like understanding where people put their value, right? And I think that's
Yeah.
the side of it that once I started to see it that way, it kind of changed the way I saw money. And we can go into this later, on the episode with some of the conversations we're going to have. So for me, it's just like, again, having that conversation, you're asking, again, to your point, where's the money at? Like, how does wealth generation work? And also on the other side of it, it's like, okay, we're working hard, we're generating this money, looking, putting aside money for your future self, for your future legacy, and your children, or whatever your legacy would be. But then part of that's also a societal responsibility of, the people that are supposed to be stewarding the money and hard work, being able to at least understand to a certain degree what they should be doing with the money, and what they, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? So it's not like I'm not going to be an expert in government, but like what they should be doing, so you can ask the right questions, and then you can sort of make moves that make sense for you and your family and your situation within that. So that's why I think this is a good, that's why we chose that name.
Yeah.
So
I
yeah,
like.
where the money at? We're still working on the theme music though, so we'll
Well, we
we'll
gonna
get
get it.
something out there.
We gonna get it. We definitely
Yeah,
are
we're
gonna
gonna
get
get it.
it.
Yeah. No, it's
But
good. I like it.
I like something you said there with you said the keyword you said there was value. But what popped into my head is a question I want to ask the two of you, and I tend to do these random questions. But what is your relationship with money? How did you see your relationship with money growing up, and how has that transitioned to you today?
Well, how much time we have for this podcast?
That's a loaded one.
Just short clip,
Short
short.
clip.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
Summarize it. We could get into a deeper conversation in another episode. But
yeah.
summarize
Okay.
that.
I'll try to go on this one. I think for me, my it's still a work in progress, but I would say my initial, relationship with money was that, they say this whole poverty mentality. That was the mentality I had with money. So what I mean by that is, like, I had this belief that money was limited supply. So so like, oh, you only have certain amount, and only certain amount of people are allowed to have X amount of money. You're not one of those people, so this is what you have, so you have to manage it. And obviously that manifested itself, sometimes situational things happened. I was in school, no money, took out student loans, things like that. So like the situation also sort of like fed the feedback loop of what I assumed about money. But it wasn't until, much later, as I was sort of evolving and having a better understanding. There's a book I read as well, The Psychology of Money. I can't remember the author of that book, but even prior to reading the book. So when I read the book more recently, the last couple of years, but it validated a lot of my new journey with understanding money, and understanding that actually having like an abundance mentality is kind of where I see money today. And what that means is that it doesn't mean like I have an infinite amount of money, but literally it's how I think stops the amount of opportunity that I can create and value that can add to people, and then you would get rewarded part of adding value to people. So I feel like and you be a better steward of it. So I think it's still an ongoing journey. And some days I wake up and you're just like, when you're in the grind and hustle, you're like, "Wow, is that really it?" But when I stop and like take a couple of steps back and realize money can always be made. Money, like
Yep.
it's not even, it sounds so like woo woo and all those people, but honestly, it's just the point is like having your mentality around, um, again, just being willing to add value to people and being willing to just be a good steward of this amazing gift that you have. And it'll like once your mindset shifts, like the sky is the limit.
Yep.
So anyways, that's kind of my journey with money right now.
It's interesting how you put that, that money's in abundance, because I'll never forget what my dad, when I was younger, he said it before, because this happens in a lot of countries. It's happened in most of our countries, diaspora countries, etc., where you have people that may not be from there that come there and make bank in your country and become a
Yeah.
controlling area. So, and I say this in no kind of confrontational and angry way, but we have, like, a lot of Lebanese came to Ghana and have become very successful in Ghana, and this is over time kind of thing. So they invested there, and it happens all over. I think there's like Syrians in Trinidad, etc.
Yep.
But
Grenada too.
Grenada too, right?
Yeah.
So he said once he was talking to a Lebanese person, the Lebanese person told him that the unfortunate thing is there's money on the streets of Ghana that Ghanaians can't see, right? And
Wow.
you fully grasped and understood it,
Yeah.
because similar to Ray, it was this like hoarder mentality. You hold on to what you have, and you have this idea. Your when you're in school, your part-time job is the only way you can make a buck. Then your full-time career is the only way you can make a buck. And I think now more than ever, has the understanding of, there's a lot of different ways to get into it, including just social media if you're good enough. And I'll even say this, even down to people who solicit themselves, whatever, even online. What I mean to say is there's still ways to generate that isn't the traditional ways we've been taught, right?
Yeah.
And that kind of relates to how I'm trying to journey through understanding money, is because I didn't grow up really having a great sense of it or being educated to understand it very well. So I had a bad relationship with money and didn't understand how to be effective with it. And then you become an adult and things get serious. So then you start to have to learn, because you don't want to hit the same obstructions or challenges or issues time and time again, because it causes a lot of bigger problems down the road. So he's like, okay, I got to start to learn one thing. I got to start to learn. And then you start to learn subtle things like, and I think this is where people forget. I think a personal evaluation of who you are and how you deal with things is necessary for a financial success as well, because though your personality directly relates to how you deal with stresses, etc. So if you are excessively buying off of stressful days, you're probably overspending from what your budget allocates to deal with that event, emotion, feeling, things of that nature. And people
Yeah.
don't realize how all those different things play into your spending. You go out all the time, you can chill, but no, you are going to spend a ton of money on a drink instead of buying
Stressful
a bottle
spending,
at a
right?
time.
Yep. Yep.
Or even people don't even take in, and that's a big one that's happening right now, is gambling. They don't take in how they're affected, and we misunderstand a $10 bet. So, right, the idea is it's only $10, but you're betting $10 in a successive order in a complete amount of time, and you're not catching those aspects of your addictions are playing into these things. Smoking, all these little things actually take up a lot more money than people realize. So I think part of that journey, and for me, my understanding of money is not just understanding markets or understanding budgeting and finance, but also having a deeper understanding of myself and how I lead into situations that make me misuse money and how I should manage those as well. So I
No,
think
that's
those are
huge.
that part.
That
you
is
know?
huge. And that part of emotional spending is something everyone has to deal with, including
Mm-hmm.
myself, including
Mm-hmm.
even though I'm, financially literate to a certain extent, I still find myself like, oh man, I rather just buy it now, have this coffee, have this bagel, have this right now, just because I know it'll just make me feel better in that moment, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to just, you know what, let me just go home and eat what's at home.
Yeah.
Make the
Yeah.
coffee, the ground coffee that I got at home. So that
Yeah.
that that that's massive. And I guess tying into me is that when I was younger, and something my dad always used to say is like, don't ever make money a problem. And the reason he would say that is that I would be like, that, this costs this much, but he's like, but do you need it? Yeah, well, don't make
Mm.
it a problem, right? Like just spend it, and rather, as opposed to now that I'm older, I'm like, okay, I need it, but maybe I could go online to find if I could find some coupons to get it cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Or maybe I might wait an extra month or two because I know Black Friday sales coming up. So let me just chill. Rather in the moment right there and then just spending to get it. I start to realize as I get older is that okay, well, no money. I started to start looking at money as my little soldiers. I'm like, for every dollar that I spend and I don't get it back, it makes me feel sad. Like I
Mm-hmm.
lost a little homie,
Those
right?
soldiers
So
going away.
my little soldiers is gone. But if I know, okay, I can spend this dollar, but I got $10 bringing me back 10 more dollars or 10 more soldiers, then it doesn't feel as bad. And that's
Mm-hmm.
when I started looking at things a little bit differently. So it's just like before I used to be impulsive and like anytime I see something I want on Amazon, I will just buy it, right? Now I've eased up on that and I bought Amazon shares and I own part of the company. So every time I order something now that I actually need to get on Amazon, I don't feel that bad.
You're,
There's
you're
some
invested in yourself.
gratification. I know some of that is going to come back to me in the form of share buyback. So
Yeah.
so that's how like I just feel over time I looked at money as just something, okay, I'm gonna just use it to spend it and just buy, and I didn't really have a real relationship with it. And now I've started to form a better relationship and understanding, okay, well, I got some money working for me. Now I could spend some and not feel too bad, but I'm still being mindful of certain things and still working on it on a day-to-day basis.
You know what? You know what's interesting? I also realize our generation is some of the last generations coming from the time of a single income household, right? Where one parent, regardless of situation, could sustain the home,
Yeah.
two cars, vacations, etc. So the understanding, so for a lot of us, it's difficult to grasp the idea of having two or three revenues or sources
Mm,
of income
Yeah.
when
mm,
we grew up knowing one. So you're battling that mindset too, and
mm,
how things used to operate. And the other part of that too is you are now making adjustments to the reality of how things have changed. You want to keep up some of those joys you had through your childhood that really are not in place for you to do now. Daycare when you were a kid was probably a couple $100, but now it's starting 16, 17. It's more than some people's rent. So, if so these are the things you got to consider when you're thinking about maintaining some of these things and where to cut and how to go about it. And Dre, you mentioned it subtly about looking for a coupon, but the greatest thing about our period of time is, especially with Google, if you take 2 seconds to look, you can find a coupon, a
Exactly.
discount, a system to help you pay less, something, even
Yep.
if it's a payment plan, like there's options. So don't just fall for the okie doke and go spend your money on these people for free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
All right, so that was a good conversation we had on relationship with money there, which leads very well to the next question. Is as we're having these conversations en route to wealth generation, what things would you say you wish you did differently growing up, and what you did differently or knew differently And what are some things that you think, some good things that you learned growing up as well today? Who wants to take that? And it's a bit of a loaded question.
I can start.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Easily. First off, I should have known about Google and invested in them way back when. That's first. But being that I was in there, one thing I will say is, yes, I wish I saved better. I also wish I got into computer something. So I wish I gave into the STEM field, and I would advise for any kid coming up now or any parent trying to figure out what to do with your kids, let them have something, some foot, even if it's not their whole body, let them have a foot in STEM. It is the way of the future and is the most secure way to go moving forward. STEM, or in this case, nursing. It seems like nursing for some reason is going to be huge in the future based on job markets. But yeah, I would say those would be two big things. And I should have, this is a more personal thing, to be honest. One thing I do wish I did more of and actually pushed for, I should have gone harder with the comedy in high school. I mean, university, and when I got right out of it. Given the time and what it was, I think it could have generated a lot more. But I'm not going to lie, I was also caught in the Ottawa mentality. Like, I can't get out of here at that time. Never think that way, kids. Never think that way.
That's true. I mean, don't you think right now that comedy is still like you could tell jokes till you're 70, right?
Well, you can, but with what I want to do with it, it's a little different now to just get up and be like, hey, I'm gonna just go off to LA for 3 months.
I see what you're saying.
You
I
know
see
what
what you're
I
saying. The
mean?
grinding time would have been when you were younger, getting your hours in at the clubs, doing all that
Exactly.
stuff, going
Because people
hard.
don't realize you can't do it once or twice a week. Like, if you're doing this is a full-time job. You have to be willing to make the distances and do the shows, and you're constantly out there. And it's just trippy sometimes because um Che Durena and Alan Shane Lewis we lived in the same place at one time, and we all used to do comedy at the same time. One is doing Great Canadian Bake Off, the other one is touring all over the States. And you've seen a lot of people, a lot of my peers at that time who are really making it big. Sterling Scott, who's on Canada's Got Talent and all that. So it's kind of trippy to see where it took when they made that. And, I chose a family route. Don't regret it. Don't regret it. But yeah, it's just that difference. I just wish I grinded earlier.
Nah, I feel you on that.
Hmm.
Definitely feel you on that. Um, I guess I could
Are you,
jump in
Dre?
here.
Yeah.
That's a very loaded question because there's like the school side, there's the career side, there's just the personal side. So I guess I'll give a little bit on each. For school, I will say this. I was not a student per like me in school, like I just tried to pass. Like that was my main goal. I was not top of the class. I was like that was never me. And only now that I'm older, I can look back and realize that the school educational system just didn't fit my learning style.
Mm,
So a lot of the time I never thought I was like a smart person. Like it's sad to say, but like it's real. I never thought I was a smart person. I just thought I used to get by, figure out ways to get by. And then what I started to realize, fast forward, I think during my co-op in college here in Ontario, I started to realize like, okay, I don't really enjoy the school aspect of life, but I do enjoy the real life aspect of life. I like the fact that okay, when I'm out learning, when I'm working, I'm actually learning something that is useful, right? So it's starting to understand that. And then when I started getting into my career, I started realizing like I am smart. like I I understand things. Like things start making sense. And it's funny because when I was doing college and university in engineering, that stuff, I figured it out, but I didn't fully understand it. But now that I'm working, I realize I could go back to college and I'll be an A plus student because instead of me just
mm,
getting the theory aspect of things,
Mm-hmm.
When I do the practical, now I could understand the theory aspect of it. So one of the things I will tell people is that if you're any way, shape, or form in my boat where you're just close into school, give it your all, give it your best because school helps with structure. However, don't think that this is the end all be all. Don't think this is it.
Yep.
You could get into
Yep.
trades. You could
Yep.
start like when you start working, you start realizing, okay, so I start had a better understanding of taxes and I started had a better understanding of money. I got into debt, started understanding, okay, what are the debt repayment methods I could implement that could help me? And then the most important part, I started learning about investing later on in life. And when I growing up, I used to play a lot of basketball, and obviously, rest in peace, Kobe Mamba. He was like a big inspiration, almost like a father figure to me. And because of my relationship with Kobe, like I took that and I was able to apply it to real life. Like I worked as hard when I was trying to get something done. I might not have been the greatest at it, but I always worked hard on that. And that part of my mentality kind of seeped into the investing side because I started learning about the stock market and even though real estate is my first love, something about the stock market triggered something in me where I just went on a rabbit hole and just started studying. So I started buying courses, mentorships, books, and just started I actually got I got addicted to it at one point where I just couldn't stop learning about it because it was this intriguing, fascinating I want to call it a device or a system that you can put your money into that will give you back even more money. So I'll just say, exposing yourself to co-ops, getting practical experience is one thing that really helped. Understanding that school is not the end all be all, and there's way more to life. There's way, way more to life, and you just got to be patient and go through the journey and just enjoy that.
Yeah. No, that's very good. That's well said. I think for me, it's a very good question. I know I asked the question now. It's my turn to answer the question. I think, well, the school side is a bit of a joke, but I was actually in computer engineering. I should just stuck it out. Then I maybe in Google and all them boys these days, Who knows?
Yeah.
Because I started computer engineering and then I ended up switching to civil engineering. But I think for me, there's a couple of things. I think I wish I really understood compound interest like really well. Like in theory, we took finance classes and all that because the
Mm-hmm.
reason I said that is like, if I had really had that awareness and whatever you want to call it, even when I didn't have much to work with in terms of money, just putting anything aside earlier on, as little as it would have been. You can imagine what compound interest would have done. We're talking 20 years now. Again, just think about as you know what I'm talking about, as little as that could have been. So that's
Yeah.
one.
Mm-hmm.
Two, with especially with real estate, again, this kind of connects to compound interest. I wish I had the understanding to get a couple of people together, like, hey, let's buy something together, or even people whose parents are like, hey, because I knew a couple of people that maybe their parents bought the real estate, they were renting it out, or then they had a roommate renting it out, but they own the property. Again, think of compound interest. You bought a townhouse in Ottawa in 2003, how much you would have
Oh
made
man,
leverage
man,
and done.
right,
You know what I'm saying?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is, you know why you're hitting me? My parents bought a place. You remember, because I lived close to
Yeah.
you guys.
Yeah.
That house, they bought that one. And when we graduated, my dad's like, yeah, we should just sell it. If we sat on it, and that's
Yeah.
why when you said it about buying, I was like,
It
if
hurts.
we
It hit a
sat on
spot.
that,
Yeah.
yeah, because
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
would have
No,
been,
I get
it would
it.
have been clutch.
Yeah, no, exactly. So I think, and again, so I think, yeah. So for me, those are the kind of things where just if I wish I had more exposure to sort of this, that knowledge. But on the flip side, I think part of my journey and where I am is like my story, the things that happened to me are part of I had to go through those things to be able to be where I am, to understand like experientially now, right? So I don't regret, anything in life, because now I'm like, oh, okay, if I had done that then, so then I can use my experience from then to advise or, encourage people who might be in a similar situation, or they just started off and just like, hey, look, it seems 20 years seems like a long time, but it will go by like this,
Yeah.
so yeah, I think for me that's what I wish I wish I had somebody that maybe I was close to, or that was maybe a bit of like a mentor from, just to understand a little bit of that. And then so in my life I try to be that person, if they want it, because ultimately you can lead a horse to water, you can't make it drink, right? I'm sure you can
Mhm.
testify to that. So, but
Man,
yeah, that's something for me.
Yeah, no, compound interest note is massive because, like you said, I've done statistics. I understand the whole works of how compounding works. However, until you see it in your own accounts, until like you apply it, and it's funny because I was listening to a podcast recently, and they said a lot of parents try to teach their kids financial literacy early, and they're like, it doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is until the kid has their own credit card and they start seeing their own payments and their statements and all this other stuff, and they start seeing how things are impacting them. That's the only time it will trigger something in their brain in order for them to start putting it all together. Like you could teach them certain things along the way and try to guide them, but until they're actually in that, and that's why a lot of people leave their riches to their kids and then they blow it. Like even though they had the knowledge or they were being told certain things up front or
mhm,
early, until they're in that situation, a lot of people struggle with applying that into their everyday lives.
mhm.
So experience is really and truly the best thing
The
ever. It's
greatest
until
teacher.
yeah, it honestly is. So it's until you're in that situation. And Kwaku, man, that real estate stuff, like especially now we all live in Canada, and owning a property is almost like a luxury because you have to pay a hefty premium to own something, at least within the GTA and certain other
Mhm.
cities around in Canada.
Yep.
But
Yep.
man, if you had just got in early, like I always thought about it, I'm like, damn, I should have not go to university and just buy
You know?
something
It
after
was
college.
it was a 3 bedroom semi-detached basement parking spot, the whole nine, everything. And it was inside the thing that's crazy about it is, and this is something that's happening all over, they have built up all around that South Keys area.
Oh my God. So the property is
So
just worth way more. Way more. And I always think, and Ray, you said you want to get a few people in on deals. I'm just thinking like multi-family home apartments,
Yeah.
like things you could run,
mhm,
things you could learn from. You'll learn how to put up a drywall, how to fix drywalls. Like these are the projects I dream that me and my son and potential hopefully future kids, we could have these type of projects. We like, all right, we
mhm.
got this, and you going to trade school, bro.
Yeah. Yeah.
Listen, I want to
I ain't
make
paying
this
no
point.
carpenter.
I want to make this point, and I think it's vital. So I met a plumber who was making 85 an hour when he did jobs. And for him to just come tell you something's wrong was 120.
Yep.
And it's because all of us dumbasses were told to go to university. And we all packed up those damn schools for all that money. And the few went into trades. Guess what? Guess what I realized as an adult? You always have to use the bathroom. You
Yep.
always have to shower. You're
Yep.
gonna need your lights to go on. Your car is gonna need to be fixed. All of these jobs are not going in. AI is not about to take over them right now.
Nope.
And all
Yes.
those tradespeople right now are just living pretty. You can
Yep.
sit there and see what you want about construction workers, but I have seen construction workers live in mansions. So listen,
They
put your
built it
kids in
themselves.
trades. Okay, there's enough. There's Coursera, there's Udemy, there's enough sources for them to learn. university shit online. Put them in trades. Like, it's so vital.
No, I agree. I definitely agree. And you know what's funny? We're in growing up in Grenada. I live in a town called Palmas, and I lived on the top of the hill, and the bottom of the hill was a trade school. And the thing is, most people viewed that trade school like if you went
Mhm.
to there, like, ugh.
Yeah.
And now that I'm older, I'm like, bro, how did I not go to any of their summer programs and learn a skill? I'm like, I'm the dumbest person alive,
Right.
bro. I should have been in ULO and I was making this joke with my mom the other day. I'm like, every time you're sending me to Hankies to computer classes so I can learn Word and Excel, I should have been learning how to weld
Yep.
and wire some kind of equipment. But anyhow, Excel actually ended up being very good for me later on. So not all bad, but definitely trades would have made me a lot more money.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Guess
100%.
who helps with the piping and the plumbing at a nuclear power plant?
Yep.
A plumber. So, you know what I'm saying? Don't sleep like we were telling you want to, because it's, you can hear it. I don't know about you, but you can hear it in your mind. Like, oh, so you want to go to school to become a fitter. You want to become a
Fight
plumber,
with that, right?
electrician. Eh? You're going to do all these. That's what you want to become. You have to
Don't tell
become a
us.
doctor, a lawyer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And this is the mentality we grew up with. So we did look at the trades as ugh, and they're
Yep.
looking at us as
Ugh.
broke.
It's
Oh,
true.
I,
It's true.
I feel
It's funny, but you're speaking fast, man. I can't even lie about
I,
that.
I feel like that is the gem of this episode. Like,
Yeah.
we're trying to rush ahead. No, that is the thing. Like,
Yeah.
especially because now there's a whole bunch of us that no skills. We're trying
Right.
to learn, but it's not the same. And then there's all like so many people in the trend. There's just not enough trades. A lot of people in the
Mhm.
trades are tend to be a little bit older because right before our generation. And some of
Exactly.
these people want to retire, but they just can't retire because there's no one to do it. And they want
Yeah.
to
Thank you.
pass it on to people to apprentice, but there's nobody to, you know what I mean? So it's a very interesting, yeah,
Mhm.
there's lots of opportunities there. And especially as, the economy in Canada is growing, again, more and more people, especially generally, on the real estate side of it, more and more people are starting to live in more compact spaces. And if
Yeah.
rented out homes,
Exactly.
townhouses and condos, so you definitely can't touch if you knew what you were doing. And so
Mhm.
that demand is just like crazy there, and there's just not enough people to do that. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's the gem, honestly. The trades, that's the way to go.
100%.
And it's true. And I didn't want to say this earlier, but I slightly disagree with your point earlier, Kweku, when you said if you have a kid, get them into computer science, computer engineering,
Mhm.
because the CEO of NVIDIA, which is a
Mhm.
semiconductor company, he's
Mhm.
actually stated that we're moving into a world where essentially we don't need no more programmers. The softwares that's coming out, the artificial intelligence that's coming out right now, they're able to write codes for you. So what they
Apparently,
act,
code is put into English too.
yeah, and what they're exactly, so what they're trying to do is they actually want people with more skills and trades to learn how to use AI to make things better. That's where we're trying to get to the point.
Mm.
So I understand what you're saying and I
Yeah.
understand the importance, but I think because of the advancement of technology over the last, especially over the last decade, I think we're getting to a point where it's like, okay, we're all AI is good, technology is great.
Mhm.
However, we're all unique in our own separate ways. How
Mhm.
can we use our unique skills and implement that using
Fair
AI to
point.
make the world different? Not
Fair
even
point.
better, just different,
Different. Fair point.
right? And I
Fair
think that's
point.
where things will get a lot more interesting because if you're a comedian, if you're a plumber, if you're an electrician, if you're a doctor, whatever, any kind of field, you can figure out a way to use technology today and in the future to make things different.
Yeah.
impactful. And I think that's how a lot of people are going to be able to create more revenue. And we can see how I think we're going into a whole different type of world over the next decade, to be quite honest with you. I'm actually
Yeah.
excited to see how things play out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, and I feel like the trades and AI. I feel like we should save that conversation for another episode. But there's a whole sort of opportunity in terms of not just buying, not just real estate, but buying businesses and buying trades businesses who are trying to cash out of the matrix, so to speak, and opportunities there. That's a whole nother conversation I feel like we should touch on at another point, because there is some value in that. There's some propositions that have been provided that just need the funds to make it happen. So yeah,
Yep.
lots of opportunities in that as well. No, that was good. So moving on to the market now. Dre, I know you had a couple of updates that maybe you wanted to share with us, and we can just talk in that. Yeah, so what
All
is
right.
Yeah.
My world. I'm getting prepared for this segment going forward. Let's just to let you guys know. But first things first, S&P 500 today made new all-time highs. We love to see that. When
Okay.
the S&P starts making new all-time highs, means more than likely we're going up. Now, the reason for the S&P making new all-time highs is because what we had in the US today was CPI. What is CPI? CPI stands for Consumer Price Index, and Consumer Price Index, aka inflation. And for everyone who doesn't, who is maybe you're not aware, a couple years ago, inflation had went through the roof, and in order for the government to try to maintain it, cool it down, they did what we call quantitative tightening. And quantitative tightening is when we went from a low interest rate environment to a high interest rate environment. So they gradually kept increasing interest rates, making things more expensive. To in order for you to take, any type of credit out, it's going to cost you a lot more. So the reason they did that is because they were trying to kill demand. So the way the world works is you have supply and you have demand. When things are in high demand, people continue to buy, and the people who are selling will continue to increase prices.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if the cost of borrowing is a lot more, people are going to do less spending, and they're hoping that when less spending happens, prices have to come down, or in this situation, they're not as increasing as fast as they were. And a lot of people mistake inflation as, well, inflation's coming down, but they're like, but things are still expensive. Well, yeah, it's not deflation, it's inflation. So that means things aren't going up as fast as it once did. So the inflation reading came in line with expectation, which is a sigh of relief, because people were worried that if inflation readings for the last 7 data readings, 5 were hotter than expected, meaning that what economists believe the inflation reading would be, the inflation actual numbers came in higher than expectation. So people were worrying that, okay, if we have another high reading, that means they may potentially look to increase rates again. That was not the case. We got a low reading, so the market continued to go higher. Now, the way this impacts, or well, it's linked to the Canadian economy. We've seen that the European Central Bank, they're on par to cut rates come this June. My understanding is that the European economy is not doing as well as the US, as most other economies aren't doing as well as the US. So in order to breathe some life into it, they want to cut rates so that they could pump a little bit more cash into the economy. Now, the reason this is important is because once one central bank cuts rate, the rest tend to follow right afterwards. So we're looking at the Bank of Canada potentially cutting rates later this year. And right now, the federal government in the US, they're now anticipating rate cuts to start happening in September. The Fed tool watch, the Fed rate watch tool was just updated today after the inflation reading, and they're looking at a potential rate cut in September. Now, if Bank of Canada cuts rates and the US does not, that will impact the Canadian dollar drastically. And the same thing for the ECB. If the ECB cuts rates and the US does not, their dollar is going to get hit hard because the US dollar is still going to be strong. So there's just a few things to think about when, interest rates are either going to get cut or will they maintain it. And it's just something we want to be mindful of.
Okay, ECB being just terminology, ECB being the European Central Bank,
Yes.
the US operates with the US Federal Reserve. And I think so what you're saying is the European Central Bank, the Bank of Canada, and the US Federal Reserve tend to like to be in line because our markets are tied. So if one drops, usually the rest drop too. However, if one drops and the others don't, it weakens the value of the one that dropped.
Yes.
Right?
Significantly. Yep. You got it.
Okay.
You got it right there. So
There
it's
you go.
just certain things like, for instance, if I'm someone who sends money back to Grenada, where the conversion right now is maybe 2 for 1. So that means for 1 Canadian dollar, we get back 2 EC dollars. If Bank of Canada cuts rates and I try to send home money back home and the US doesn't cut rate, then my dollar won't be as valuable. So you might get, a conversion of 1 to maybe 1.6, 1.5, sometimes even less. And that part sucks because if we go to the States and we travel and we want to spend money, now we're spending a lot more dollars, Canadian dollars, in order, to meet their conversion. And that's the part that is, and the Canadian dollar has been doing terrible. Like, don't we haven't been doing well for the last few years. So in order for that to happen, and that means we're going to get cut even more and our dollar is going to be less valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Means I ain't going nowhere in a hurry. I'm going to be here.
Gotta write it out.
Spending my Canadian dollars in Canada because it makes no sense for me to spend it anywhere else, to be honest. And maybe in Europe, maybe if we're lucky, but we'll see.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. So I think Canada's in this situation where, from what I'm hearing, it sounds like they kind of need to wait. Well, you might think it's a balancing act between waiting to see what the US does, so that at the very least, as bad as our dollar is already right now, that gap doesn't increase more than where it is. So yeah, essentially, yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, it's just it's a crazy time. And in a way, it's good because it's forces us to like pay attention more to the markets and what what the impacts are with America and Canada and and Europe and that. So I know but it's at the same time, watching is good because then if you're paying attention now, you start to ask the questions like, okay, what are the decisions that our government and leaders and Bank of Canada and things making, and what implications could it have? Whereas before, for the most part, I think we just just assumed everything was hunky dory and moving along, right? So I think at least this myself personally, I kind of like pay attention a bit more. So I think it's good that we have that there. Now, yeah, with real estate, again, it's another funny one. I feel like the real estate section, especially in Canada, it's probably going to be like 30 seconds every episode. Yeah. And what I mean by that is like the rates, if the rates go up and go down and get cut, people are going to just go into the market again because in an interesting way, like you were saying, the supply demand in Canada, that demand is still there.
Still high.
We have like a huge people waiting, people waiting to move up market. There's new immigrants, so which part of it's also government policy that kind of has that little bubble of people waiting there. So yeah, the moment rates go down, yeah, and the properties are going to go up. So right now, what we're finding with real estate is some people are trying to get ahead of the curve a little bit. So actually, it's a funny thing, at least in the Vancouver market, and I think Bonner is kind of similar, where there's a lot of listings, a lot more listings, since post-COVID numbers. But typically, when you have a lot of listings and you don't have a lot of deals, you expect prices to go down, is the fundamental, typical paradigm. But this time around, there's a lot of listings, but if they're not selling, the prices are not going down because the sellers like have a number that they're gonna list. They're just almost like testing the market. So it's literally this weird, because again, if you're just looking at the number of listings, you're thinking, oh, number of listings, and typically it'll drop into a buyer's market, but no, it's still a seller's market. It's a very, very interesting time because again, sellers are like, look, I'm not going to sell beyond a certain number, but I want to test the market to see what's out there. So you can imagine once the interest rates go down, the prop prices, most likely would go up in relation to that.
Mhm.
It's a
Mhm.
Yeah,
yeah, it's a wild time.
Mhm.
yeah, 100%. And it's a balancing act right now for the Bank of Canada, because the whole reason the U.S. federal government has been, basically saying, hey, we're not ready to cut rates yet. Like, we still need inflation to come down, which I believe the inflation numbers is completely manipulated, but that's a whole different conversation. Um, when you're seeing that, you got to think now, how many Canadians do we know that live paycheck to paycheck? We know a
Mm.
lot. How many of Canadians that we know that live paycheck to paycheck that own homes that have renewals coming up?
Mhm.
So there's a bit
Those,
of a
yeah,
balancing act with Bank of Canada, because yeah, you're waiting on the US to, like
but
Ray said, not increase that gap in the dollars. However, if you have, and I remember listening to stats last year, and I was actually talking to a few people who work in banks. There's like, I think, $3 trillion worth of mortgages coming up for renewals. So you're at a spot where it's like, okay, yeah, you could wait. However, if these people start defaulting, or if the listings, like Ray said, keeps popping up, because in my neighborhood, I'm seeing a lot of for sale signs, which is interesting. But if those listings keep going down, now I do think this will come with time, and it all depends on if cuts happen or not. But if, let's just say, hypothetically, we don't get cuts for the next 2-3 years, and a lot of people are renewing and they can't afford these new mortgages at these higher rates, we're going to see these prices come down, and they're going to come down heavy. And that's a whole different dynamic. But we'll see. I don't think
I'm
so, but we'll see.
that also makes it scary for a lot of those people coming up because you're going to see a lot of defaults. The thing is, imagine you when you got your mortgage, it was 2,500. When you're going up for renewal, you're looking at what, close to 45, maybe
Yeah.
five,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Some people
So
will be over like 100% increase.
So that's a real situation that somebody has to deal with. You've planned life by that 25, and in 2026, 2024, 25, 26, you're looking at double that. So then, I mean, 90 days is when they start to really get concerned about your defaulted mortgage payments. And if you're defaulting there, you're defaulting on all other bills because the money's been
Yeah.
spread thin. And
Yeah.
that's what the problem is. So then that's the overall collapse. And that's where people get in trouble. I did have a question for you, Dre, because okay, so and this is worst case scenario. If Canada cuts, US keeps it up. We already know that. So that means if I'm a Canadian business person, but my supply, because a lot of people actually run certain supplies, goods through a US
Yep.
wholesaler or a US service, meaning I'm charging the amount that I'm paying out to that company for those goods. I have to raise my prices for my profit margin to stay the same because I'm working with less because the cost of product is more now, correct?
Yep.
So then one way customers might see it is increase in price on certain things. Because if it's
Yep.
not just that, then there's going to be an increase also on the transportation of the goods and everything. So then you start to see people joke. We joke about it, but there was a time when a Big Mac combo was $2.99, and shit's like $17 now. You are looking, maybe they're manipulating it, but that's what I mean by you'll see an exponential growth, the extra $2-3 on that item that you buy every 2 weeks, right?
100%. Yep.
And so this is where it affects now. If your customer base is like, this is too much, I don't want to pay, or I'm going for a cheaper one, business can default. Or if your cost is more than you're bringing in overall, like there's a lot of implications. So if people aren't kind of understanding why this is a big deal, it breaks down in a lot of ways because the implications hit on every single level. The minute the cost goes, the minute your dollar's worth less, whenever you're relying on a foreign market, you are now at the mercy of that market. So that becomes a problem for you locally here. So yeah, we will feel it on an everyday level if that was to happen. That's why it's easier if everybody comes down at the same time. the ease is kind of even across the board. It kind of keeps it steady, and hopefully people don't keep the price up here, even though everything is cheaper here, which I kind of think they will because
Yeah, why
we've
wouldn't you
accepted
want
it.
right? And man, you hit it on the nail on the head right there, because when you're looking at that, so not only, okay, you're buying at a higher price, right, from your supplier and whatever, and you try to pass that cost on to the consumer. Like
Mhm.
you said, if the consumer does not accept those high prices, which a lot of people actually aren't, like there were people rebelling, buying from certain grocery stores. I don't know if I should
Yeah.
call their names or not, but we know the big grocery stores out
Right.
here.
Right.
And so you start looking at it, what happens then? Well, deflation comes into play. And this is something economist Kathy Woods have talked about before, is that the biggest risk to what the Fed has done with all this rate increases is potential we could see a deflation in the economy. It means that
Mhm.
no longer prices are going up, prices are going to start coming down. And then when you start going in a deflationary environment, you're in a recession at that point,
Yep.
right? When the consumer can't afford more, then that's when the camels the what's the straw broke the camel's back.
Back. Yep.
Like that's
Yep.
that's essentially what that situation will be, and we don't want to get in that situation. We don't need a recession like that, because right now this is technically a man-made recession. They can reverse all of that by cutting rates. So they do have the power in their hands. The question is, do they want, how much pain do they want the consumers to feel? I think that's the real question. How much pain do whoever it is pulling the strings, how
Yep.
much pain do they want the consumers to feel?
Yeah. No.
Okay, so the one thing that kind of stuck with me that I've always thought about is when you said how much pain are they willing to inflict. So I'm gonna use a pizza as a description, right? Just so you get the idea. I've always felt when a lot of the industries that exist now, I'm talking car manufacturers, etc., the big boys that make a lot of decisions, the big dogs, right? If you were to separate how the money broke down between employer down to employee, what I'll say was there was a more equitable thing. Like they got three slices, managers got two, the employee got one. But now they have eight slices, the manager has one, and we have half. So I've felt what's happened in our society is there used to be consideration for a bit more equity, like the pay gap between the lowest paid employee and the CEO in say 1960 or 1970 compared to now. Even I'll even make the argument 1980s and 1990s compared to now is now it's such a far greater gap, and I also feel there's less concern for whether or not the common man can deal with it. Because even coming out of the pandemic, there wasn't a lot of accommodations made for people to recover financially to deal with it and deal with costs. We were kind of just slapped with these high costs, and people were like, eat it. And they also know we're going to eat it. I mean, just a bit of an aside, on the CBC National today, one of the stories that they covered is RBC and BMO. Both banks have customers who refuse to sign non-disclosure agreements after they found uh, phantom charges on their accounts, where they were being charged $1.50 for transactions, etc., for little things that they weren't supposed to be charged for over years.
Mhm.
So what I mean is, I feel the big companies or the companies that make these decisions don't care to inflict more. They'll let us feel it more because they care more about eating off the profits than there was a division as at a time period before. Like they're not, you know what I mean? I don't
Yeah.
know if it's making sense, but do you grasp?
No, no, to me it makes sense. And I'll just say this quick thing. So one thing I learned recently is these companies, so let's just use Starbucks and McDonald's for instance. Starbucks and McDonald's for the last few years, the price of fast food has actually increased drastically. I think it has been like 28, 29% over the last
Mhm.
year. And what they notice is that they continue to doing that until the consumer said no more. So recently, McDonald's just said, "Hey, we're bringing back our $5 menu." So, and then Starbucks, if you have the app, they started sending you, "Hey, if you come between this and this time, you get 50% off drinks." So that's just to tell you they'll take your money. They'll take your money
Right.
for as long as you will allow them to take your money. I know that when the
Yes.
consumer pushed back, and the reason I could tell you this is because Starbucks just dropped like 10% in a day on the stock because their revenues declined. And the reason their revenues declined is because consumers cannot pay this much more for coffee anymore. So what Starbucks is doing is, and McDonald's is doing is like, "Hey guys, come back. We got cheaper options for you." And that's how the whole system works.
Mhm.
So like you're right, they will inflict pain until the majority of us can't handle it, and then there will
Mhm.
be like, "All right, let's cut rates," and that's it. That's really and truly how the game works.
Yeah. At what cost? How many families? How many people? Right? Because we're not the US who have this great population density where you can almost kind of hide them and there's a lot of options. Look, there's what, three, four major cities across this whole country and a whole lot of land. So when options are thin, options are
Are
thin.
thin.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
No,
No,
and
it's
And it's
that's the
scary.
part where you just gotta be ready and you gotta understand money and know where your money's at so
Yeah.
that you could, if anything bad happens, at least you could weather that storm, hopefully.
yeah.
And if
Yeah,
not,
no.
you start an OnlyFans.
Hey. Hey.
Listen, yeah,
Hey. Hey.
yeah. It's just because of how this economy is different. I don't think, and the thing is, I think it's a cautionary tale for people. If this goes, and the hope is that it doesn't, but if this goes sideways, it's going to be really sideways for people. I think people need to realize it's going to be a huge impact. We are going to feel it, and the numbers are going to be significant. It won't be contained to a small amount in the 1 to 2% that they like to make us feel. It will be significant. So I think people need to really, really plan and pay attention.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right?
No, that's a good point. And yeah, I just wanted to circle back to
Mhm.
some of the points we're talking about with, mortgages being renewed.
Mhm.
Basically a lot of people had mortgages during COVID at, very drastically low rates, and then a lot of renewals coming up. I think there is, just to sort of not paint a fully grim picture.
Mhm.
There is a significant percentage of people who had mortgages that were on variable rates at the time. So I guess what that means is a huge percentage, and maybe by next episode I'll have those numbers, or at least what we have already suffered, if that makes sense. Like I know, quite a few people who
Because they dealt with the
it's
boost
already they've
up.
already dealt with it because variable made sense at the time, and generally,
Mhm.
you can argue whether it makes sense over fixed. That's you can two sides of one coin. But
Mhm.
so there's quite a few who have already sort of struggled with a lot of that right now. So that's one side. So it's not going to be like this complete, bloodbath of people who are unfixed that are now going to have to renew with a new number. So that's one. Still not good, but I'm just saying like it's not completely there. And then the other
Put
side of
context
that
to it.
is the government in Canada, at least to my generally, I think because again we're stifling innovation. So a lot of the ways the taxation of government makes is from real estate. So in a weird way, very strange, but they've kind of created wealth in real estate, and they want to tax you on that, and hence taxes go up with the real estate. So now, again, if I'm playing game theory, it's not in their interest for real estate prices to crash, because if it crashes, it's less. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
It
So
affects
I
them.
do know there are some government programs. I think we talked about it early in the year, essentially to support people who are renewing their mortgages. It's almost like they're basically encouraging banks to give people a soft landing. So part of that could be if you're with an A lender,
Mm.
which is typical of the main banks, they kind of like just send you a few forms, and as long as generally things are the way they were, you just ordering it. You're paying more, but you know what I'm trying to say. So there are some things they are put in place to sort of reduce the
Cushion the
likelihood of
fall.
that catastrophe, because it
Mhm.
would be a
Yeah.
catastrophe, not just for the people, but the whole thing, and then the sort of house of
Yeah.
cards will collapse. It's a
Yeah.
weird way, but it just it is, and that's kind of where. So it's not ideal, and I still think we need to like, and this is why I'm yeah, I still think they need to. We need to have a government that's more pro business and innovation. So it's not just you're not putting all your eggs in this like real
Mhm.
estate
In one
asset,
basket. Yeah.
right? So, but for now, they've sort of hedged some of those a little bit for now. And again, that might buy them another few years. Not gonna, I don't think that's sustainable. But what I mean is like I know those are some things that are in place. So I just want to touch on that point there.
Ray,
Yeah.
would you happen to know why Canada does 5-year renewals, but in the States, your mortgage rate is your mortgage rate for 30 years, come hell or high water? Like, why do we have this 5-year renewal system?
Good question.
Mhm.
Good question. We do have it. So why? I think part of it's with the US again. I think the U Canada's generally more conservative. Well, yes, I would say with their financial regulations. So the US, I believe, well, they just have more numbers that there is enough of like a movement in the market where they can afford situations where people are locked into like 30-year mortgage, 30-year terms and without,
Mm,
so because essentially once you're in there, you're not leaving your house, right? But the US has so many people,
true.
so much land, so much demand that that won't necessarily stifle the demand for supply for real estate, right? If you think of it that way. Whereas Canada,
Yeah.
we at least before we didn't necessarily have that luxury. So can the Canadian it's real estate or what I call it, stress testing in the mortgage world, they had to be a bit more conservative, and which is actually it was a good thing before because we couldn't afford those drastic swings. That's why in the States again, the last 4 years have been this weird anomaly. But if you take out COVID, prior to that, US had a lot of boom bust real estate. Canada generally was not boom bust real estate. It was kind of like just
Busting.
ticking
Yeah.
along quietly in a corner because it was very regulated, but there wasn't. And then when COVID happens, you push this thing, you drop it, and then the demand goes up. And then so now we're not asking this question like, hey, wait, what's going on? And so that's why you're
Yeah.
seeing this sort of cliff come in partly because they've made some drastic policies to overcorrect or undercorrect the market, and it's had these implications. So now we're asking the question, like, hey, why can't we go to where the US is? Now the question is, should we do that? A
Mm,
couple of people have asked the question, like, should we go there? I don't know if Canada. I mean, obviously, for people who own homes, it's great. You're like, hey, cool. I'm locked with 30 years. Don't bother me again. But I don't
mhm.
think we have enough of the supply it's going to make it way worse, I think,
Yeah.
because of the supply constraints that we have in Canada. If we had more supply of homes to balance that, like people locked in their home, then yeah, maybe it
Yeah.
could work. But right
That
now,
makes
you do
sense.
that because I'm telling you, if they tell me 3% forever, I'm not selling anything. So there goes
Yeah.
four homes.
So then
It locks people are
the
not
market
moving,
gets
right?
stagnant.
Yeah,
The
because we don't
market
have the
gets stagnant
supply.
before it gets
Like
more.
but the US is pro business, is
Uh,
pro innovation,
But
pro.
the
So
demand
yeah,
will
yeah,
keep
those guys
building.
locked in, but they open up an entire town of like 50,000 homes, and then they could spread as well across. You move
I
from
got you.
California to Arizona, but we don't have those luxuries. So yeah, it's a long-winded way of saying that, but
Yeah.
I think that's kind of why it's like that.
We need more people.
Yeah. So
Yeah, and more
essentially the
pro
supply will
innovation.
be restricted. The supply will be restricted. The demand will just keep increasing. And I mean, house prices are going to go through the roof.
It's gonna go through
Roof.
the roof.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
No
that's why
one
we
will
need
ever be
we
able
need
to.
we need that supply, but we also need pro investment to be able to come up with like, hey, let's go build homes. Right now, if I have a big construction company or whatever, I'm like, I don't know if I want to touch Canada right now because I don't know where
Yeah.
I'm gonna end up, right? So then they're not
Yeah.
coming to build here.
Yeah.
So it's good or bad. It was good, it helped us because we trickled along, but then now with all this extra pushing and pushing, that's why we're seeing this strange things in the market with real estate. But yeah, it's very fascinating. And we're learning a lot. I'm learning a lot. So I think
Yeah.
I'm always like, I know it's sometimes it could be negative, but like I just think as an opportunity, I'm learning like, oh, that makes sense. Because some things that you have a paradigm that, oh, it should be as straightforward as this and that, or even like the easiest one was you drop prices, you raise interest rates, prices are supposed to drop, and then all of a sudden, like, well, why is it not dropping? So it's we're definitely in a very more complex economy, and I think we need, and that's again, I know I'm ranting here, but this is why I think people need to understand finance, economics, and how money works better, so that the future, hopefully, if you have leaders that that grow from today onwards, they can come up with better solutions. Because I think, what in my opinion, part of the issues we're having is we have leaders who kind of work in the old paradigm of sort of economic policy and using very
Yeah.
blunt tools to like solve a problem, and then actually everyone else is basically just like collateral damage because they're using blunt tools to try to solve a problem. That obviously no one's got a perfect solution, but that's what we're seeing here. So yeah, that was a good conversation. I like that.
Yeah.
Lots of gems there. So just before we wrap up, anyone listening to any interesting podcasts, reading any interesting books for the last couple of weeks here?
So I'm still on my book. What's the name? I'm drawing a blank.
Algebra of wealth, algebra of
The
money,
yeah, the formula out there. Anyhow, I'll come
algebra.
back. The algebra? No, anyhow.
That's fine.
I'll get the name, but still reading my book, and I am also, like I said, I got the mentorship stuff coming up, so I'm looking forward to that. And overall, I don't I'll say I don't got too much going on. Just staying updated with the market and see what's going on, and loving these conversations we're having, because I didn't know a lot of the stuff you just said with the programs that the government's put into place. And you made a good point about the variable interest rates and all that stuff.
Mhm.
People are already on that. So other than that, it's the same old. It's been a week. We're
Yeah,
supposed to do it every 2 weeks. But no, I'm good, and I'm looking forward to this long weekend, and looking forward to getting some reading done and getting my workshop going.
it's
There
good.
you
It's
go.
good. How about
There
you,
you
Kwaku? Any
go. The main thing is it's more work related, but so there's this thing called Safe Talk, and it's all related to suicide, suicide intervention and mental health training, things of that nature. And there's a couple of trainings that I've coming up that I'm excited about because um and this is not really our area, but it's also the ability to identify and intervene in areas where people are going through very serious mental struggles. And, even looking at it, I've realized the common ways and means that we determine depression in a lot of people sometimes looks very different within our community. And, even if you look at, and I'm even talking beyond us, if you look at people who are part of gangs, etc., or come off as, I'm ready to die, I don't care. Sometimes those are signs of depression itself, just because you're not pulling the trigger yourself and you're waiting for somebody else to do it, kind of still there. So, I mean, those things I kind of find interesting because there's a few more things that are happening in terms of the average people and the well-being of people, and people are not in a good place overall. So learning more about that mental health thing, I think it's going to play out in a different way. And for us living in Toronto, you're seeing the signs of more mental health cases affecting in society. You're seeing how people are turning there. The outbreak of fentanyl and all these strain carfentanil and all these types of things, these are all results of people struggling and a lack of, and this is not a rant about the government, etc. It's just we're going through a tough time right now. And drugs, alcohol abuse, all those types of things are very, very, very huge indicators of what's actually happening on the ground and where your problem areas lie. Like a lot of social services are needed, things like that. So I just find it interesting to I've really in my career, especially because working in corrections, I have grown an appreciation for the understanding of mental health and all those types of areas, and understanding the factors that go into it and how those play out in society. And it's wild. I don't think people realize, if you want to get a pulse of, like Vancouver, you want to get a pulse of it. I forgot the name of the street, but it's,
Hastings?
we, thank you. Hastings. That's where your city actually is. When they tell you, when they say you're as strong as your weakest link, I think it's reflective in Canadian society because, and I say this, and I don't say this in a controversial way, but if I have nothing and I'm wallowing in nothing and I have nothing to lose, what do I do next?
Chaos.
See what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
and you take that and you partner it with an entitled generation, right? Who don't really care.
Yeah.
Don't really care and don't care about the repercussions and don't own homes, so they don't care about losing their house.
Yeah.
What do you think? You're building a very interesting formula here. So it's just something where my attention and stuff has gone. So that's where I'm kind of at.
And I'm happy you said that because this goes on to something you had said last podcast is I think all of us have experienced it. Our insurance has gone up. Recently, insurance has been going up quite steadily, and that is directly linked to the amount of carjackings that's been happening, right? So people think that all these things are going on. It's not, it's impacting you. It's impacting your
Yes.
dollars. It impacts you. So people need to understand that, and this is where we got to figure out better ways how to manage our money, how not to get into these type of situations where we're just desperate and the last resort is to go to steal and carjack and doing
Yep.
all this other stuff, because the more carjackings we have in the area, especially in the areas that you're living in, the higher your auto insurance is going to be.
Yeah.
If your house is being broken in, and like if you're going through insurance or any of this other stuff, like these are the things that will come back to impact you one way or the other. So
Yeah.
you make a good point, man. We got to
Yeah.
be mindful of what's going on. Don't ignore it, and we got to attack these problems one at a time.
100%. Ray, I'm going to say I think you would be aware of this, the importance of municipal meetings and the municipal budget and how that breaks out. Because I never used to do so, but it's my wife that even got me into it. The municipal governments decide how funds are distributed and used within your community, right? So I say that to say, if the municipal government is dedicating more funds to, say, policing, yes, you have that increase, but if there's a major need for social services, and so it's creating more, homeless people in a certain area, that impacts the value of the land and your properties within that area. So how your municipal government is deciding to spend money in your areas directly impacts the value of your homes, the value of your resources, and what's going to be available to you depending on what happens. So go to municipal meetings, people.
Yeah, good point. And to add to that, because I think there's also one extra thing that I find gets missed is like, and it's hard to do, but even if they have a lot of money for social housing, what's the quality? But like that,
Thank
because that's
you.
the thing that my eyes have been opened more recently. Because again,
Mhm.
it's been like, okay, they put money in social housing, that's good. That's a good thing. And most people, the conversation kind of ends there. Like, oh yeah, government puts social housing, cool. What's the quality? And you see some of the quality of this thing. So again, this is the key to holding the government accountable. So one, have money for it for sure, but also now what's the quality of what you're providing for people? Because I've seen some horror stories. There was something I was watching on YouTube the other day, and it was of Ottawa actually, where landlords were sort of helping participate in this government program to help people who are homed. And it's like a housing first, they call it, right? And it was under the premise of like get people housing first, then most issues would get resolved, which is it sounds good, and I kind of agree with that premise. The only difference is like they just did the housing and they left the rest. So this houses are just absolutely garbage and trash now, and the government's like, well, at least we did the housing first thing. So anyway, that's we can get into that another time. But I agree with your point, and again, it's kind of like people having this conversation to understand how it works, so you know the right questions to ask. Like a lot of people,
100%.
governments know how to do virtual signaling because they say the thing that sounds good, which is good. You want to be, but like, how do we hold them accountable? So I think help, but first it starts with people understanding for themselves what's going on for you, and then what's a better way of doing things, and I've been able to be willing to learn and not just rely on like an external organization to always be the solution, because like, yeah, they might say the thing that sounds nice, but how does that look? At best, they're trying, they just don't know what they're doing. At worst, there might be some more nefarious things, but
Thank you.
kind of that there. But yeah, so I think I think this is a good way to end it here. This has been a great episode. I think we're gonna have some good clips on this here. And again, just
Wait, what
recap.
about you? You didn't tell us what you've been up to this
Man
week.
said, y'all don't need to know about me.
Yeah, right. Like,
Okay.
I'm going to
Very
England, mate.
nice. No, come on, mate.
yeah.
Okay, so well, what I've been watching is there's a show. It's called My First Million. It's on YouTube. It's basically it's two entrepreneurs who they're more in the tech world, but they always talk about their journey in entrepreneurship, how they started, how they came up with ideas, and kind of where they are today. So, and then they usually interview different entrepreneurs and different people. So, funny enough, one of the people was, I think, Scott Galloway, who wrote the book that you're referring to, Dre. That's why
Yeah.
I asked him, like, isn't that the same
By the
book you
way,
talked about?
the algebra. That yes, you're right. You were 100% on it.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
algebra, wealth, the
That's
simple
right.
formula. Yeah, for
Yes,
financial
yes.
security.
Yes, yeah. So that's I usually kind of have that sometimes, like I kind of watch it periodically. So I was just listening this week, and that was something that came up, and I was, that's the book that Dre mentioned, and so they were interviewing the author of the book. Very funny guy, very sarcastic,
Yes.
well,
Yeah.
very funny, very good. So yeah, I'll listen to him or even that book. So that would be definitely on my summer reading with that book for sure. So yeah, that's what I've been listening to. And yeah, like I said, going on, work's been busy, but yeah, off to London, England.
cheerio, jolly good.
We're gonna go watch the last game of the Premier League, and
Oh,
Arsenal might
sweet.
win it. Hey,
Right?
Sweet.
You
so
how
we'll
has
see.
Arsenal been over the years? You are a diehard fan.
You know.
I know you've rolled with them for a long time, and I'm like,
Yep.
I haven't seen a lot of championships, but
Yeah. Don't worry about that.
Haven't seen any.
This year is our year.
yeah. Every year is your year, Dallas Cowboys.
That's right. But this time around, we actually have up to the last day, and it might be our year. Usually, it ends by like January. It's already done.
Oh, so you're actually in the game this time?
Yeah, like literally, like this game, it's the last game, and basically, if we win and the other team doesn't win, then we win. But if we both win, the other team has just enough points to beat us. But either way, it's gonna be a good time. So yeah, why not?
There you go.
Yeah, I
Yes,
don't blame you
sir.
at all.
So that's what's going on. But yeah, so anyways, thanks everyone for tuning in to official episode 1 of Where the Money at podcast.
Where the money
And
at.
you can catch us on all platforms, YouTube, Spotify, and all podcast platforms. And stay tuned for the next couple of episodes, because I think we have some fire topics that we're going to be talking about. Take care, everyone. Peace.
We haven't even touched the surface.